Good evening, Whiskey Club members. Trevor here, as always. Thank you for joining us on this last day of September. Quite the hot week here in Southern California for those that are based here. I heard it's supposed to be like 100 degrees on Wednesday. So it definitely doesn't feel like we're heading into October, but nonetheless, this is the last day of September, and we are here talking about our September pick, which was our Clyde Mays barrel pick, 104 proof straight rye, which we'll obviously get into in a second. So before I introduce our guests this evening, just wanted to talk about a couple of quick club announcements, some things that we have coming up. As always, if you're joining us from Facebook or YouTube, go ahead and get your questions ready. We have a couple great prizes to give away tonight, which I'll talk about in a minute. We did release our Blanton's barrel pick to our Blanton's Gold barrel pick to our 1 year plus members last Saturday, just a couple of days ago. That was $150 a bottle. So if you're been in the club for over a year, you have until this upcoming Saturday to grab that bottle before we open up that to everybody. So you'll still be able to buy it, but just it's going to be open to everyone. So on Saturday at 11 a.m., anybody that's an active member in the club, that does mean that you have to be an active member for the month of October, will be able to purchase that Blanton's Gold barrel pick. So really exciting. Got a couple more additional releases coming up for next month. We are going to be releasing a Bardstown Rye pick, 2 different Bardstown Rye pick. That will be the first Bardstown Rye barrel pick that's ever hit the state of California. So we're really excited about that. We have a 4 Roses pick coming up, cast strength single barrel 4 Roses. The recipe is OESQ because a lot of people have been asking me that. So it's an OESQ 4 Roses single barrel pick. And then I am excited to announce that as of earlier last week, I don't have a date yet, but we did secure a barrel of Stag Junior that hopefully will be released in the next few months. So, but just some exciting stuff coming up. We got some cool stuff with Frey Ranch. We got some cool stuff with Freeland coming up for full features as well before the end of the year. So really excited about that. Before I introduce our guests, I just want to talk about the prizes we have to give away tonight. So get those questions going in the comment section. First place, we're going to be giving away a bottle of the Alabama Cast Strength 9 year, 120 proof. So that is one of the special releases from Clyde Mays. And then second place, we're going to be giving away a bottle of Special Reserve Straight Bourbon. So you got 2 whiskeys in your bag this month. I'm having some lighting issues here, but so it just went really dark. But you had this one, and then we had the 375 ml of this the straight bourbon. So tonight we'll just be talking about this, but you did get 2 whiskeys this month. So those are all my announcements. Steve, LC, we'll start with Steve. You want to tell us who you are and what you do for Clyde Mays, and then we'll jump over to LC.
Sure. Thank you very much. I appreciate you guys having us here tonight. Just wanted to, briefly introduce myself. Steve May. I'm the Vice President General Manager of the Conecuh Ridge Distillery there in Troy, Alabama. Been with the company about a year and a half. I am leading the project to build the distillery and get us up and running so that we're creating jobs in Troy and also making our whiskey all in Troy, Alabama. So that's me.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us. And LC, if you've been in the club for a while, you may recognize LC. But LC, tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so thank you for having me again. For those of you that either were not here when I spoke a few years ago or maybe need a refresher, my name is LC May. I'm the National Brand Ambassador and Alabama State Manager for Conecuh Brands, or more specifically, Clyde Mays Whiskey. I'm also the grandson of the original maker, Clyde May. So I basically travel the country and have the opportunity to tell my grandfather's story and share his legacy. And talk about what makes his whiskey and bourbon unique. And when I'm not doing that, I'm here on the home front in Alabama, just slowly but surely building up brand awareness and creating quite the fan base here in the state, and hope to continue to do that all over the country. But thank you for having me here tonight.
Awesome. And before we get into kind of the history of Clyde Mays, because I already know the answer to this question for LC, but Steve, what kind of led you to the whiskey industry? We always like to kind of get some background on your journey, and then what brought you to the whiskey world.
Yeah, sure. My dad was an entrepreneur, and he owned a bar. He owned a bowling alley that had a bar attached to it. So, in college, I was over events in my fraternity. So very active in the alcohol space. It took me a while. I worked for General Electric and Boeing Aircraft, and then was recruited to Brown-Forman, spent in supply chain. So I'd spent about 26 years in supply chain, and that's just getting goods and services to supply manufacturers to customers. And they brought me in to help them with their bottling plant. They had grown substantially over the years. And so I was very proud to go to work for Brown-Forman. And during that period of time, I just developed relationships with the marketing team. And they needed someone that had run businesses before, and I had. So they offered me the opportunity to be the director of guest experiences for the Jack Daniel's distillery. It's one of the largest tourist attractions in the state of Tennessee. So for about 15 and a half years, I did that, about 19 years total with the company. And so, had a lot of experience in distillation and working with the team there. We ran all the single barrel selections. We did 10,000 single barrel selections during my tenure there. It was quite the enterprise. About 300,000 guests a year. So during that time, I made a lot of friends and in the industry, and it came time for me to retire, and I went ahead and retired from Brown-Forman, and then a few years after I had retired, I was contacted by the folks at Conecuh Brands and given the opportunity to come in and help them get this distillery up and running, because I'd spent about 10 years on the executive committee with Brown-Forman. They did numerous, distillery expansions. And so I was actively involved from a leadership standpoint in, a $2-3 billion facility there in Lynchburg, Tennessee. So getting the opportunity to come down to Troy. I'm from Alabama, originally born and raised. So it's just a good homecoming for me to get back to Alabama. I really love being back, and it's been really nice to be involved with the folks at Conecuh Brands, especially the Clyde Mays brand. I met LC about a year and a half ago, and he and I hit it off. Somehow or another, we both think we're probably related somewhere along the way, but it's just coincidence.
Yeah, I was going to say we probably should have said that. There's no relation. It's same last name, but no relation.
There is no relation, but we're brothers from different mothers. That's what I said. So we're very close. We talk a lot. LC and I have very similar notions about the direction of the brand. Things are really going really well. It's a pleasure to work with people like LC. LC's a real go-getter. And that's the kind of person I am. I like getting things done. And, Clyde Mays is on a roll here. Things are really growing and going. The distillery is almost finished. We're at 95% in 2 buildings and about 87% in the distillery building. And we're working day and night, weekends, everything to try to get the place open by the first of the year. Hopefully we'll achieve that goal, but we still have a few hurdles to overcome before we will know for sure if we're going to be able to get open by then. But surely by the end of the first quarter of 25, we'll be open.
Awesome. Look forward to it. I think the last time we had LC on, I think it was just announced or shortly was announced sometime around there that the distillery was.
Yeah,
being
we had
built,
just
so.
broken ground right around then, and
Yeah.
it's been we broke ground on an undeveloped property. It was an old horse farm, so there was a lot to do from literally the ground up. Steve's been a part of the heavy lifting here the last year and a half, but and Steve can probably talk more later on to some of the hurdles that we've faced, both on a construction point of view. Being in a control state, Alabama is one of the tougher control states in the U.S., so there's been a variety of hurdles in that aspect as well. But it's taken maybe a little bit longer than we would have liked, but if you're not going to do something right, don't bother doing it at all. And we're going to do this thing right because that's the only way to do it.
One caveat I'd like to just mention is that, a lot of the multinational large companies in the spirits industry, they have huge resources and they get things done quickly. Well, we've not built a lot of these distilleries. We know how to make whiskey. We know exactly what we're doing, but we wanted to be sure that, we only have one chance. This is the only distillery that we're going to have, and we wanted to make sure. So it's taken us a bit longer, not having the enormous resources on our team. So we've been very selective in who we hire and who we bring on to help us get things done. And it's just taken a little bit longer. The pandemic didn't help us any. So some of our equipment got delayed a few years because, the buying power of the big company.
Yeah, I know how that is.
They jump in front of you. So we got kind of pushed back. So, but look, here's the thing. We're right at the cusp of getting this thing open. I mean, I wish I could spend some time just showing you some pictures. I think maybe, Elsie, did you get any of the latest distillery pictures? I don't
have any on my computer. No.
Okay. I'm going to see if I can get some pulled up here.
Sure.
And we'll try to share some of those.
Awesome. While you do that, Elsie, you want to can you, for those that don't know, or weren't on the call a while back,
Right.
Just give us kind of the history of Clyde Mays and where the brand came from and your grandfather and kind of your family's history in the whiskey making world.
Yeah, absolutely. More than happy to. So Clyde May, my grandfather, was born and raised in Southeast Alabama, actually in between the town where we're building our distillery, which is Troy, Alabama, and another town called Union Springs, Alabama. Born to a single mother, never knew his father, and his mother died when he was very young, when he was about 5 years old. So he was raised by his grandparents during the Great Depression. So I don't have to go into detail. I'm sure you can all imagine how difficult of a childhood my grandfather had. And being in rural Southeast Alabama, this was a different time where, higher education and opportunities were not present for a lot of people there. So, he fought World War II, Purple Heart recipient, Bronze Star recipient. And after he returned home from World War II, in addition to having a full-time job, in 1946, he started making moonshine whiskey. And my grandfather never sold a legal bottle in his entire life. So from 1946 until he died in 1990, the only time between that time frame that he wasn't making whiskey illegally is when he went to prison for 8 months for making whiskey illegally. So he had the rap sheet to prove it. He was a firm believer.
I'm sure he figured out how to make some hooch or something.
I don't know. I think he was just trying to get out as quickly. He got sentenced to 2 years, and it was kind of a known thing, like, hey, don't screw up and you'll get out early. So I think he was hard set on being a good boy during those first couple of months or first 8 months or so when he finally got out. But yeah, I mean, I know that there's so much about moonshining that's either stereotypical or what little may be known about it has been through popular culture in like recent years, like with shows like Moonshiners. Clyde May never dreamed or aspired to create a legal brand. That was not something that ever crossed his mind. He was just trying to provide for his family, but he was a firm believer that if you, no matter what you do in life, your reputation is attached to it. So he did the little things that you hear master distillers talk about, hey, here's what I do to make my bourbon or my whiskey. And he was doing that at a time when he was doing it illegally. So when he told people, hey, I take my time in the process, other moonshiners in the area, they didn't take their time. They were rushing. They didn't want to get caught. They didn't want to get arrested. But my grandfather, in his mind, if he sold someone a batch of whiskey that was not his best, in his mind, he was selling them a lie. And he took the time to age a lot of his moonshine into whiskey, which was something that was unique because, when you're doing it illegally and you're trying to age it in a 53-gallon barrel, you're sitting on 53 gallons of evidence. So, where do you put that? So he had to be really creative, not only with how he aged it, but how he finished it, because he didn't have the luxury of aging it for as long as we do today. Our youngest product is 4 years old. He was lucky if he could age his for 1 year. So the Alabama style, I believe that was one of the questions, the Alabama style whiskey, what that means. Claude May used to finish his aged whiskey with oven dried apple slices. Now the apple slices were not used to necessarily flavor the whiskey. He was just looking for a softer finish to help smoothen out the whiskey. And in doing so, also using oven dried apple slices, it would help darken the overall color of the whiskey. Because as I'm sure many of you know, if you lay something down in a barrel and you only age it for a year, it's not going to come out the nice amber or charred color that you expect to see. It's going to be more yellowish and unappealing. So the oven dried aspect would help darken the whiskey. Today, any bottle of Clyde Mays that says Alabama style, it means it's finished with a hint of apple. Now, today, we do not use oven dried apple slices because we don't have the aging issue. We're able to age for as long as we'd like. But we use natural apple extract after it's already been dumped out of the barrels and batched. In fact, up until the point before we add that little hint of apple, it's legally a straight bourbon. But once we add that little hint of apple, we can no longer legally call it a bourbon. So that's why we came up with the phrase Alabama style whiskey. And then there's a question about, I'll have to kind of dig through some of these questions, but
don't worry about the question. We'll get to the questions at the end. Yeah.
But to round out, my grandfather, like I said, we use his original recipe in any Alabama style whiskey. We have products that are not Alabama style. So for example, your single barrel rye pick is a straight rye whiskey. There's no hint of apple. The straight bourbon, the 92 proof straight bourbon, no hint of apple. The only ones that have the hint of apple are the ones that say Alabama style. And
if you're interested in trying that, we do have one of those whiskeys on the actual menu at our restaurants. We have the special reserve, the Alabama.
Special reserve, 110 proof. Yes, absolutely. So, that was something. That's kind of one of the things that makes us unique. That and the fact that we're not your typical marketing, tell a story. Hey, Claude Mays, pretty cool. He was a moonshiner, got arrested for it, died. Somebody made his recipe legal. He had 8 children. All 4 of his sons, including my own father, had been arrested at least one time for making whiskey illegally. When I was a freshman in college, which was 2013, when I came home on the weekends to visit my family, if I wanted to see my dad, it's when I drove him back to jail on his work release program from making moonshine illegally. So, this is the real deal. They were just, trying to carry on Clyde's legacy. One of my uncles, Kenny May, is who started the legal brand that we know today. And he has since passed away. And over the course of time, we've assembled a great team to really help grow the brand outside of just Alabama. We're now available in all 50 states and a handful of countries. So we've really come a long way since those early beginnings of a moonshiner.
Awesome. I want to go back to something you said about your grandfather and like his process. So you were saying that, he took his time, he didn't just churning out product. was that something that led to, in a positive way, to his reputation? And was he able to charge more for his moonshine versus a moonshiner that was making something that was, just straight out of the still,
Right.
not aged, and turned out quickly?
Yeah, I mean, a majority of what he sold in his lifetime was unaged White Lightning moonshine. But like I said, to your point, he did the little things that made a big difference. Like, just some of the, so moonshiners, for those of you that might be unfamiliar, when you have a moonshine still, there are certain parts of the still where steam might leak out. So you have to dough it up with flour, basically make dough, and you dough the seams to keep the steam from escaping. And he was so peculiar. He would only use one particular brand of flour. And I mean, in your mind, you're thinking, come on, I mean, does that really impact the whiskey? In his mind, it did. And if you were to go on Google right now and type in an image search and say moonshine still, 99% of the moonshine stills you would see are pot stills. That's what, moonshiners are associated with. My grandfather designed his own unique type of still. He called it the 240 because the one particular piece that made it unique, which was the tank, or it's actually two pieces really, the tank and the condenser. Those pieces cost about $240 worth of copper to build in the late 1950s. So he called it the 240. Today we call it the Clyde 240. Obviously he didn't call it that because
do you still have it?
Yeah, we have one of his original ones. Yes, it'll be on display at our right when you walk into our distillery and kind of the main, what we call the big house. One of his last surviving moonshine stills will be there on display. So, and we incorporated in our logo as well, the original still. But to answer your question too about was he able to charge more? Absolutely. I mean, the small area where we're from, it's Bullock County, Alabama is the county. At one point, this area had the highest concentration of moonshiners in the United States, just because there wasn't a whole lot of money to be made elsewhere and people had to provide for their families. And at the time my grandfather died, my father, who was the youngest of the 8 children, took over the illegal moonshine operation. And for years, the sort of the other moonshiners in the community, they never had any beef with Clyde because he was their elder and, they kind of respected him and they were not going to run up on him and say, hey man, you're taking all of our business. But when he died and the, 22-year-old kid takes over, they're like, yeah, we're going to teach this punk a lesson. And what my dad simply told him is, hey, I charge $13 a gallon, you charge $9, and I sell 200 gallons more a week than you do. If yours was better than mine, with it being cheaper, they'd buy yours. So, that definitely later, the quality and the little things he did definitely impacted his customer base, the amount he was able to sell, and most importantly, the quality of the product.
Did you guys get any, or did your dad, when it became a legal operation, when you said your uncle, started a legal operation, was there like any pushback in the moonshining community as far as like, selling out or like,
right. There was no pushback at all. It was all support from the family, many family members, most of the family members, even grandchildren. I'm the youngest grandchild. I was the only one that was sort of young enough to turn the whiskey business into a career, so to speak. But the families have always been supportive and supported it more so on an investment level. But while they did support it and root for it, what a lot of people don't understand is for the first 10, 11, 12 years of our legal existence, we were a nobody. We were in the, barely distributed anywhere, even barely in Alabama. We were just trying to figure it out. My uncle, God rest his soul, while he was, will always get the credit for creating the legal brand and having, these great ideas to help that we still use today even. He didn't have the background and the experience to really help it grow and expand. But when it was made legal, my dad didn't stop doing it illegally. I mean, It was named the official state spirit in 2004, and that created a lot of press. At the time, Alabama is the only state in the country with an official state spirit. And when that happened, like the Wall Street Journal and the Chicago Tribune all came down and did articles. Saturday Night Live made a reference to it on their evening update. So we got a lot of press back then. And in the Wall Street Journal article and the Chicago Tribune article, part of the story was telling how moonshining still exists within the May family. And my uncle asked my dad's permission, and my dad took him to his moonshine still, because obviously they're not blowing his cover, because that was for print, not for television. So he wasn't scared to show them, but he would have never shown a TV crew or anything. But so yeah, that was kind of the way it worked. And while the family supported it, to be honest, I don't know that anybody ever dreamed or imagined it would get to where it is today, but we're sure as heck grateful it did.
That's awesome. What's been, sorry.
No, you're fine.
So you, when did you say that? It's 2001 is when you launched the brand as a legal?
Yes. The process started in 1999. Just to give a little, backstory, this probably will answer a lot of questions you guys that are listening have anyway, but legal distillation of spirits did not occur in the state of Alabama until 2014. So in 1999, my uncle Kenny May set out to try to get a license to build the first ever distillery in the state of Alabama. And he more or less battled the state for a year and a half, 2 years. And it got to the point to where there was just no budging, nothing was happening. So he started contract distilling outside of Alabama, and then bringing it back to the state with the finishing process early on. Now we do all the finishing at the same facility, and I'll explain all that in a moment too. But so it confuses people, because they're like, okay, wait a second. It wasn't legal to distill until 2014, but you were named the official state spirit in 2004. How does that work? Well, to be honest, there's not a great answer to that. It's just Alabama's, step or two behind the times in most things, except maybe football. I don't know. But
the product wasn't being made in Alabama, right?
It was not being made in Alabama. It was his recipe and his finish, but it was not being distilled in Alabama. And the legislators who, because like I said, it was passed through legislation. It got vetoed by the governor, and they overrode his veto to keep it the official state spirit of Alabama. The legislators who passed it, they said, hey, yes, we're talking about the spirit, the whiskey, but we also are referencing the spirit of Clyde May the man, his values, what he stood for. We feel that embodies the state of Alabama, and we want that to represent the official state spirit. And the rest is history. And it all worked out for the best. If my uncle could have built a distillery in 1999, that distillery probably would fit in my kitchen. And I don't have a big kitchen, just FYI. So now we're building a $28 million distillery on 78 acres of land. So it's really, a lot of brands build a distillery and then create a brand. We created a brand, and now we're building a distillery. So we just kind of did it the opposite way.
Awesome. All right. We're gonna get into tasting really quick, but
yeah, sure, please.
I think I asked you this last time. Do you have like a favorite story about your grandfather that like you can share?
I can share anything now that he's dead and gone. If he were alive, this brand wouldn't even exist, because he'd still be doing it illegally. So anything I can tell, like the stories I tell about my dad, even I can tell, because he doesn't make it anymore. But if he did, I wouldn't tell him, because Daddy didn't raise no snitch. But with my grandfather, there's several great stories. He had his run-ins with the law and everything like that. But the story that I always find the most entertaining, it's really more coincidental than it is anything else. But when he was arrested in the back end of 1972, what a lot of people associate with moonshining is corn whiskey, or they think of corn grain when they think of moonshine. My grandfather used a good bit of rye in his mash because he felt rye was a flavor grain. And that was another thing that was unique, because maybe there were other moonshiners in the area that used a handful of rye, but he used maybe 2 or 3 handfuls of rye. Just, he always did a little bit more. And when he was arrested during his trial, and I know this because I have his original court transcripts, they kept pressing him on the fact that, he was saying, "Hey, I'm not a moonshiner," which was a lie, but he was trying to beat a charge. But, they were like, "Hey, listen, you're telling us you're not making whiskey, but we found all these 50-pound bags of rye in your barn. What the hell are you doing with it? If you're not making whiskey." And he said something to the effect of, "Oh, I'm a farmer. I was going to plant it. Never got around to it." For those, I'm sure know, rye grows in like North Dakota. It doesn't grow in Southeast Alabama. So he kind of, set himself up for failure there. But when he did get sentenced, obviously he was bitter about it. He was not a fan of it. And moonshining back then was still a federal crime because it was untaxed alcohol. So if you got arrested, you went to federal prison. So he didn't go to state prison. He went to federal prison. And I don't know or expect anyone on the call to have served time in a federal prison, but and it may not be the same now, but back then, before he was sent off, they gave him this paperwork that he basically was forced to sign, saying that he understood he received a fair trial. And sign it or not, you're still going to prison. It doesn't change the outcome of the trial, but he had to sign it. The prosecutor had to sign it. His defense attorney had to sign it. The judge that presided over the trial had to sign it. Well, since it was a federal crime, on the last page of this paperwork, there's a stamped signature from the Attorney General of the United States. Obviously, it goes without saying the Attorney General of the United States does not take the time to hand sign every prisoner's paperwork. There was probably a stamp in a secretary's office in Montgomery, Alabama, and she just stamped it. Well, my grandfather was flipping through his paperwork, and he was like, screw him, whatever. And he gets to the last page, and there's several witnesses to this. And he said, "I hope this son of a bitch rots in prison one day too." And he throws his paperwork down. Well, the last page that he was referring to was the Attorney General. Well, the Attorney General at that time was John Mitchell. John Mitchell got arrested for his involvement in the Watergate scandal. And this is no joke. You can, Google it right now. John Mitchell served his time in the exact same prison as my grandfather, which was a federal prison on Maxwell Air Force Base in Montgomery, Alabama. So even though John Mitchell had nothing to do with my grandfather's arrest in any shape, way, or form, I guess my grandfather made a wish and his wish came true. And to the unfortunate nature to Mr. John Mitchell. But so that's always a story people enjoy more so for the coincidence than anything else. But yeah, so
that's funny. So let's taste the whiskey.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about the single barrel straight rye barrel pick. It's 104 proof.
Yes.
95.5.
Yes, correct. It's 95% rye, 5% malted barley. As I alluded to earlier, we've had to use contract distillers, or another term is sourcing. I prefer the term contract distill. But we've been using MGPI in Lawrenceburg, Indiana, which I'm sure a lot of you are probably familiar with. They're quite famous for their rye whiskeys, and rightfully so, because this is a phenomenal rye whiskey that we have. It's aged for right around the time that the samples are sent out to be sampled and picked. It's just over 5 years old. By the time we bottle it, it has been aged for another 2 to 3 months. So it comes out of the barrel at about 5 years, 4 months. It's 104 proof, straight rye whiskey, non-chill filtered. As I know all of you know, every straight rye single barrel, or straight bourbon single barrel for that fact and matter, there's always a little bit of a difference in it. It's all sort of a matter of opinion, but I don't have it with me right now, but I did have the opportunity to taste this particular sample And I'm not sure who picked it. Kudos to whoever did, because it's a phenomenal sample. I think it has I'll let you, I'll shut up and let everybody drink. And if you're not already, cheers, please, because you'll have to hear me ramble forever. But I think it has a phenomenal nose, and I think that nose really follows through to the finish on this one, more so than a lot of the rye single barrels that I've tasted from other brands in the past.
Awesome. Well, I picked it, so thank you.
Oh, yeah, well, there you go. I thought you may have picked it, but I didn't want to say it, and then you'd be like, "Well, I didn't pick it," So it's, I never assume, but yeah, but you crushed it. You really did. Which I really do think our rye single barrels. I know rye for some people tends to be somewhat of a love-hate relationship. Probably not for this group, because I believe this group is just true. Enjoyers of fine whiskey and bourbon, but these single barrel rye picks are really just phenomenal, especially this one. So I hope you guys enjoy it as much as I did. I haven't had a chance to taste it in a little while, but I made my notes, trust me, and it's a good one.
Yeah, everyone should have got their cards this month. So with these barrel picks, they're going to vary slightly per barrel, but I get a really nice like cinnamon honeysuckle thing on the nose. Some apricot, a little bit of like fresh cut grass. On the palate, that cinnamon is still lingers for sure. It's quite dry on the end, so like some black tea, which I like a lot. And then it's got a pepperiness towards the end too, with some nutmeg and cinnamon peeking through there. So go ahead and throw your tasting notes in the comment section. It's always good to see what other people are picking up. This isn't an official question that's eligible for a prize, but I saw it on Instagram. It said, "Any plans on being arrested to follow your dad and grandfather's tradition?"
That's one family tradition I hope to break, but if I do it the right way, I think it'd probably be a pretty good marketing tool for us. But I don't think my wife and my almost 2-year-old son and my mother sure as hell wouldn't appreciate it. When I was growing up, when I was 10 years old, as hillbilly as it may sound, I wanted to be a moonshiner when I grew up. And my mom is a 30-year retired school teacher, and so obviously very big on education. And oh man, that used to upset her something fierce when she had to hear that come out of my mouth. But and trust me, I did get to dip my toes in it with my dad over the years. But I plan on being involved very much in a legal way versus an illegal way. But time will tell. Never say never.
So you guys are the official whiskey of the Talladega Speedway. Can you talk to me a little bit about how that partnership came in?
Yeah, so
and are we getting a Ricky Bobby whiskey anytime soon?
Oh, well, so we did. I'm sure it's, I'll have to let Jeff or Bill or someone speak to availability, but we did do what's called a Dega pack, which is a bottle of 92 proof bourbon and a Talladega / Clyde Mays leather bound flask. So it's a value added pack of that.
All our members got that flask.
Okay, so there you go. So then you've seen the flask. Yeah, so that's something we've done. We actually, that partnership originally started, I guess, back in 2016, 2017. I believe it was the fall of 2016, which would be the second race. Every year, and we've always, they've been a great partner over the years. It's as we've, full disclosure, over the last few months, as we've geared up for the distillery, we've started, sort of honing in our marketing efforts more on the advertisement around the distillery side. But needless to say, we still love Talladega, and they've always loved us. And if you got those flasks, so that's awesome. That's something to enjoy. But we did, you said a Ricky Bobby. There was a group that picked a bourbon barrel from us, and they did it at Talladega, and then they named the barrel Ricky Bobby, or that was like their little, play on words there is that they named their
Shake and
single
bake.
barrel bake after Ricky Bobby. Yeah. So a little bit of influences. So maybe not something that was widely available, but yeah, something to that degree.
I love it. You guys have a great brand.
Thank
I like
you.
all the things that you're doing. So my last question, and then we'll get into song choices for the month and get into the questions from our members.
Sure.
So you're transitioning into making whiskey in the state of Alabama, with the new distillery. What challenges or is similarities does Alabama have in making whiskeys compared to states like Indiana or Kentucky? Like what are the pros and cons, and how are you guys addressing that?
Honestly, we've kind of gone into it with the approach of, we just have to make a quality product, and we understand the challenges of various environmental changes. Of course, the environment is not the same in Indiana as it is in Alabama. Of course, there's overlap at certain times of year, no question. I will say, I'll stand my ground on this, that I think that it gets a lot colder here than people realize, because it's not a snow cold, but it's a humidity chill in the air, get down to your bones kind of cold. You know what I mean? And maybe we can't handle it as well as others can. But as it relates to,
I'm from Southern California. I have no idea what weather
yeah,
is.
exactly. So it's, we understand that, of course, there will be overlap. Our mash bill will change, and it's nothing against the current mash bills or anything like that. We firmly stand by our product today. I firmly stand by it. Just know, if I didn't think there was quality inside every bottle we produced, I wouldn't be on this call right now, because I do what I do. I don't sell whiskey. I sell my grandfather's legacy, and his legacy of quality whiskey is what's most important to me. And we have to continue that tradition in Alabama. And we're doing a lot of the same. We got our distill from Vendome, which is sort of the Rolls Royce of still makers, based right out of there in Kentucky. Our distillery was designed by an architect group out of Kentucky. They designed Woodford Reserve and Rabbit Hole and a few other notable distilleries. So there's definitely going to be some non-Alabama influence. You kind of have to have that when you're making a bourbon or a whiskey, but it's also, at the same time, it's going to be uniquely ours. We're really going to embrace sort of the challenges. We're going to get in there and experiment, do some things as it relates to mash bills and otherwise that my grandfather was doing, and really try it out and see what happens. But I'll full disclosure, 4 years from now, if you buy a bottle of Clyde Mays and it's not MGP, it's not going to taste the same. There's going to be a difference. But what our hope is, and what we will surely accomplish, is that you'll see the quality in both. While they might be different, they're going to be both quality in different ways.
Awesome. Look forward to it. All right. So you made some song selections. I'm not sure if these were, I think we lost Steve.
I'm not sure what happened. I know he was having some connectivity issues earlier today, and he called me about them. It seemed like he got them fixed, but I'm not sure what happened there. But he and I have done, similar calls, and we talk enough to where if there's something related to the distillery, I can more than likely answer it. Yeah.
So the song selections that y'all made for the Clyde Made whiskeys were "Sweet Home Alabama" and the "Alabama Song" by The Doors. I think I know why you picked them. I kind of took your lead, and I chose 2 Alabama songs as well. But any insight on the "Sweet Home Alabama" and then the "Alabama Song"? By The Doors?
It's when someone comes to, honestly, when given the opportunity to pick a song about Alabama, if you don't pick "Sweet Home Alabama," it's kind of missing the boat a little bit. I know it seems like the very stereotypical answer. It's sometimes people might be afraid to do that. It's just like, when you ask, hey, what's your favorite song from a band? If you say the most famous song, people think you're a poser because you just named the most famous song. And this, poser or not, I think it's obviously the most famous song about Alabama. And, I think it also, for us, has a meaning and a symbolism because we've been having to, unfortunately, but fortunately, we've been making quality stuff, but we haven't had the fortune of making it in Alabama for a while, but Sweet Home Alabama's coming home soon. So we're ready to rock and roll in Alabama here coming shortly.
Awesome.
And the other song's a great song too, maybe not the same symbolism, but still a good song to pick for sure.
So I guess I kind of took your lead with the Alabama theme, and I chose Birmingham by Zach Bryan.
Yeah.
And Alabama Pines by Jason Isbell.
There you go.
So two kind of
great artists.
Yeah, good modern country artists that I like a lot. So, all right, let's dive into these questions from our audience. And then, so the way this will work is that we'll go through all of them. You'll tell me your top two, and then I'll choose first and second place.
Okay.
All right. Let me see here. Some of these may have already been answered.
And I'm happy to, circle on something if it needs revisiting.
So Clark White says, from taking your first flight at 21 to New York City for Whiskey Fest, apparently he's done some background info on you.
Somebody has, yeah. Good job, Clark.
To visiting almost 40 states, can you share your favorite memory that the whiskey industry has led you to?
Oh my gosh, so many. Well, first and foremost, just the opportunity to see and travel the U.S. like I have. I mean, I've gone to places that there's just absolutely no chance I would have ever gone to in my life if it wasn't for the opportunity to tell my grandfather's story and sell Clyde May's whiskey. I think one that just sticks out is traveling all the way to Denali, Alaska to sell Clyde May's whiskey, because I think that's a place that a lot of suppliers, maybe, and I don't, maybe I'm not trying to be, I'm trying to think of the right word to say, but I'm not trying to sound offensive to Denali, Alaska, but I don't think a lot of suppliers think it's worth their time to go somewhere like that. But I went up there and it was incredible and I enjoyed it. But whoever knew that question about my first flight being New York City Whiskey Fest, that's a true story. That's a story in and of itself. I got to meet Jimmy and Eddie Russell and a handful of other legends, and I was as green as green could be. But I knew one thing. I knew Clyde May and I knew his whiskey, and I just kind of led with it and been rocking it ever since.
Awesome. Matthew Archer asks, do you guys have any concerns changing to a new still/production facility? What steps are you taking to ensure the end product will remain the same if desired? So I think you answered that a little bit, but if you could go into some more detail.
Yeah, it's a lot of the equipment.
Steve, welcome back.
I'm going to say Steve's back. And
yeah, I never left. I just somehow or another I got my face went away.
There you go. Well, Steve, honestly, I think this is a really good question for Steve, too, because with him being the VP and the GM over the distillery, Steve, the question, if you didn't hear it, was related to, how we're addressing some of the changes going from our current facility that we're using to our very own distillery and facility in Alabama, equipment-wise and otherwise. So if you want to tackle that one, go for it.
Sure. You touched on some of them, LC, but having been at Brown-Forman, one thing I know is that we only wanted to do the highest quality equipment, highest quality product. We hired our distiller from Constellation Brands, and he's come in, and he and I have collaborated on ensuring that our suppliers for our grains are the top-notch, top-of-the-line grains. We're not going to take any shortcuts whatsoever. The barrels that we're going to be buying come from independent stave to our exacting specific requirements. And it's very important because our barrels will be toasted, then charred to our specifications. We will only use the hearts of the oak tree. These trees are 70 years old. In order to harvest those, you have to really do your research. It's very important because if you know anything about the barrel, whiskey gets most of its flavor and all of its color from the barrel. So it was extremely important for us to ensure that when we create our products, we will ensure that the barrels are exacting. The warehouses that we're building are state-of-the-art warehouses designed by Luckett and Farley, and they're going to be off-site because we want to be sure that our whiskey is maturing at the proper temperatures and things of that nature, so that we don't overcook or undercook, and we're going to be sure that the whiskey comes out just perfect at the end of the 4, 5, 6 year period of time. We've also made sure that our grain is going to be tested. We've got a world-class lab there, so we're going to be doing all of our exacting testing along the way as we make the whiskey, and then before we put it in the barrels, to just ensure that everything is done to the utmost finest quality imaginable in this industry. So, being in the industry for well over 22 years now, I can tell you that a lot of brands take shortcuts. We decided that it's going to take us longer to get our distillery open, but we're going to be sure that we won't disappoint anybody
in true fashion, right? With
yes, sir.
With Clyde
right.
Mays, it
Yes,
takes longer. As long as it's better. I love that. I love the whole sold them a lie thing. I have that like written down and like starred. I think that's such a cool.
You never rush the process, right?
Yeah, no, that's so true, and he meant it too. I mean, he was. It's no lie on his actual deathbed. When his children came to visit him and say their final goodbyes, one of the last things that he ever said to my father was referencing an order that somebody had placed, and he wanted to make sure that person got it. So he was worried about his word and his name and his reputation up until the very end. He knew that if he made somebody a promise, or he wanted to stick to it, and that included how he made his whiskey and the quality in which the whiskey was produced.
Our water source is the Conecuh River. Even though it does come through the city system, we do have filtration systems that will just make the water as pure as possible. We've got so many quality processes built into our process that we're gonna be very, very exacting, and we'll all be proud of what we produce. So,
all right, cool.
I've got some pictures. If you guys want to see some of those pictures, I'd love to show them to you before we get off here.
Yeah. Are you able to? I don't know if you have the ability to share your screen.
I don't know if I do either. It says
present. Is there a button that says present?
Steve? It says that I do. It says present right here. If I
yeah, go ahead.
Let's just see if it'll let me.
So I'm gonna.
Yeah, while he's doing that, you can jump.
Yeah, we'll go on to the next question. Sarah Steepleton wants to know, considering the apple, ingredient, have you considered an apple brandy finish at all for any of your whiskeys?
We have. We're exploring a more specific apple flavored whiskey. I don't know if it'll maybe how we do it. We got to kind of look into it a little bit deeper, but we're leaving the door wide open for all sorts of different opportunities for experimentation. While my grandfather's original recipe was not made in a way to where it was supposed to be, like an apple pie or an apple jack, as some people might call it, of course, a lot of the moonshine, the unaged moonshine he made, was eventually made into some sort of flavored, rather be apple pie or something else. So we probably and most likely will experiment with that. I don't know how quickly that, obviously our most important item on the agenda is getting everything up and running. But once we do that, that'll be certainly something we explore.
Are you guys able to see my screen?
I don't see it. I don't know if there's if they can see it and we just can. I'm not sure.
No, we can't see it.
You can't see it. Okay. All right. Trying.
If something doesn't happen and you're unable to see it, make sure to follow us on our social media channels at Clyde Mays Whiskey on Facebook and Instagram, because we have a wonderful new social media manager named Maddie Johnson. Maddie, if you're listening, shout out to you. She's been doing a wonderful job, and she's going to be posting regular distillery updates. So make sure to follow along in the process on Instagram and Facebook at Clyde Mays Whiskey.
I'm definitely going to do that.
There you go.
Speaking of your grandfather's recipe, is there any written, I'm assuming you have some of his recipes. Is there any plans to actually use his recipe? This is Art Riddle asked this question.
Yeah, so no, that's an excellent question. And there are plans it's kind of a yes and a no answer. There are plans to make a product just like Clyde May did. Obviously, the fact that we're doing it legally and we're making a 4-year-old product makes it where it's not maybe exactly just like Clyde's, but we most importantly seek the quality aspect of it. And of course we do things in all of our products, even our bourbons and ryes, that touch on something Clyde May did. But believe it or not, now there's some handwritten notes of my grandfather's we have that where he was keeping up with how many gallons he was producing in a particular week, but no recipes. That was all pure memory. So same thing. Fortunately, there's my dad and my uncle that's still living. They made enough of it to where they have it ingrained in their memory, but it's kind of one of those things like Coca-Cola's recipe. It's just, only 1 or 2 people really know the answer. I don't know that he did that on purpose. Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't want any evidence against him if he ever dropped his notebook or something and didn't want anybody to, find his recipe. But trust me, there are May family members that can certainly make it.
Sarah Steeplen asked, did your dad ever take you to his still? Do you have any memories going to your still?
Absolutely, God. I wanted to so bad my whole life. And he finally let me when I was around 11, 12 years old. Was the first time he took me to a still. He did it in a situation where he felt comfortable, which I don't know that they would have hauled me off to jail even if they called him per se. But then my obsession became worse and worse, and I wanted to ride with him to sell some to somebody, and it got worse and worse. But my memory, the best and truly in my heart fond memories is just being there with my dad as he explained to me the process and how it works and what he learned from his daddy, and really ingesting that is something that I'll never forget as long as I live. In fact, when I graduated college and my parents were like, "Hey, what do you want as a graduation present?" I asked my dad to, handwrite, how to build a still and sort of the process of how to make whiskey. And he did, and I have it framed in my office. So, that's something
awesome.
I'll always cherish. Now, if you're looking for a more comedic story, I don't know if people are familiar with sort of that ongoing joke or meme of, when you're a kid and you're trying to hold the flashlight for your dad while he's working on the motor or something like that. I went through that, except I was holding a flashlight while he was trying to fix the still. And if you shine the light in the wrong spot and somebody accidentally sees it, you're going to get busted. And trust me, I took an ass chewing or two because I wasn't quite steady enough for that flashlight. So that's so every time I see that meme of somebody, joking about holding a flashlight for their dad, I think I had a little bit more pressure on me than what the meme shows. But yeah, that's something I'll always remember too.
Why did Daddy go to jail? LC didn't hold the flashlight straight.
Sure, no, he strike 3, you're out. So all 3 times. It was usually it's a situation where someone my father would sell to would get caught, and in exchange for not having a charge brought against him, they normally wanted the supplier, and they would do some, they would call my dad and say, "Hey, I need another 30 gallons." They'd meet up, and my dad would sell it to him and the cops come out of the bushes, that sort of deal. But so third time was his final time. He did a work release thing where he got to work his regular job. At that time, he managed a logging company. He now owns a logging company, but he got to work his normal day job during the day, and then took a shower and spent the night in jail at night, and woke up and went back to work and did that for 6 months or so, maybe 5 months, something like that.
All right, I got 2 more questions for you guys.
Sure.
Okay. Linda Archer, what's the initial production quantity year 1 versus year 5? How much storage will you have on site?
That's a great question for Steve. I mean, I know the answer, but I think Steve can answer it probably more eloquently than I can. Oh, Steve, you're muted, I think. I think you're muted. Still can't hear you. Well, I'll answer it. So one of our initial rick houses will have the capacity to hold around 23,000 barrels. And then our bottling facility, I believe, has the bottling power of bottling around 600,000 bottles a year. And I think it might even be a little bit more than that if we're kind of full steam ahead. Obviously, the tricky thing about bourbon and whiskey is you have to look into the crystal ball because you're aging something. You're making it and then you're dumping it out 4, 5, 6 years later. So, basically, we have a projection growth from our end in terms of our sales that we look at, and we say, okay, we anticipate selling X amount of cases in 2025. So, and we're, a lot of it's a little hard to answer that question because we honestly don't know when our true year 1 will be. Is it going to be a 4-year-old? Is it going to be, a 3-year-old that's, blended with an older MGP or something? That's kind of the tail of the tape there. But, we hope and plan to grow exponentially year over year from year 1 to year 5. I don't necessarily have specific numbers per se, because like I said, it could vary, but I would, venture it's going to definitely more than double or triple in production size from year 1 to year 5 for sure.
Yeah, I think I got my.
There you go, Steve.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Sorry. Yeah, we have the capacity to produce 8,800 barrels per year the first year. So we can grow that to double or triple based on, like LC said, whether or not we do any contract bottling or barreling as well. So we've got the capacity to do both.
Awesome. Well, we look forward to it. So, and I'm sure you guys do as well.
Yeah.
I got one last question, then we'll choose some winners and
Sure.
We'll go about our evenings. Stephanie Bryden says, I love family businesses. How many family members are involved with the company currently?
Well, that number should grow. There's probably going to be some family members that work at the distillery in some shape, way, or form in some capacity. Most of the family members, as I mentioned earlier, when my grandfather had 8 children and 21 years separate the oldest and the youngest. So my dad's the youngest and his oldest sibling is 21 years older than him. So when this brand started in the early 2000s, all of Clyde's children and a majority of his grandchildren already had established careers. And like I mentioned, this was a thing where it didn't really get to where it is today overnight. So the family involvement has always been more investment, supporting it financially or otherwise and rooting for it. So from that point of view, there's a great deal of family members involved. In terms of day-to-day out getting in front of people or things like that, right now it's me at an official level, but all the family members, there are 4 surviving children, all of them, just numerous grandchildren and great-grandchildren. I mean, they're out acting as ambassadors every single day, and we certainly appreciate it and need it, And it always amazes me too, people that just had the smallest interaction with Clyde May and the impact he had on them, and just that small interaction to see his name and legacy expand like it is, they become ambassadors of the brand. So, maybe the number is a little bit smaller if the question's based on who's actively on payroll, so to speak. But as it relates to, out there rocking it, supporting it, rooting for it, cheering it on, it's an incalculable number, honestly, because it's not just a family, it's a community that Claude May helped impact and shape when he was here with us.
Well, you have a 2-year-old, so by the time
Yeah,
they're ready to start working,
I might say, we gotta, he's gonna have a legal still. He's gonna get to go too, So, but when he gets old enough, I'll make him hold a flashlight and let him so he can't be too soft. So he's got to learn the hard way.
I love it. All right, let's run through these questions and choose some winners. So
Sure.
We had question about going to 40 states, the memory that the favorite memory that your whiskey industry led you to. We had the question about do you guys have any concerns with the new still/production facility? What steps are you taking to ensure the product remains the same? We had the question about the throwback recipe, the moonshine recipe, the apple brandy finish question. We had the question about, sorry. We had the question about the initial production quantity,
right,
versus year 1 versus year 5. And then we had the question about the family members. Did I miss one?
We've already interviewed a few family members, LC. I don't even know if you knew that.
Yeah, I'm aware. Yeah, it's I don't know. You may have interviewed them and thought they were sorry. I don't know, so I don't want to speak.
Well, I didn't want to say that. No. No, they were excellent. And
Steve counts as an honorary family member too. If you got the same last name, you kind of have to tote your own load there too. Yeah. So he can count for sure.
Well, I will say this: I did take one for the team there, LC, because I have been arrested. I thought I'd let you know that. I didn't know if you knew that or not, but
I think I've heard of that. We didn't hold it. If anything, it strengthened your resume.
It does. It's the only time I've ever been proud of that, but it was not one of my best moments in my life. But I was 30 years old, and I had left a Christmas party with my ex-wife, and we were doing a girl a favor. She was living with us. And she started wanting more than I thought was appropriate. And her boyfriend grabbed me by the neck and punched me in the face. And I left the restroom with blood pouring down my face. And the police arrested me thinking I had caused the fight. I spent the night in the jail. So there you go.
No matter how it happens, it's
one night in jail.
A resume builder here at
that's the only time I've ever told that story.
Publicly, yeah. So no, it'll strengthen you. Don't worry about it. So,
but when you're almost 66 years old, who cares? 36 years ago.
Well, for the questions, I'll let Steve pick. The second prize winner, the Special Reserve 110 proof straight bourbon. Steve was there. That way I'm fair about it. We were each involved. I'll let Steve pick one and I'll pick one. So Steve, what was your question that you would pick that you liked the most out of them?
Well, I think the one about quality, about what are we doing different and to assure quality. I like that question because I take that very seriously. Being an old production guy, been in marketing too, I think that we're going to create one of the top whiskeys made in the United States. I know we're going to create the best one in the southeastern United States and hopefully the world. So let's go with that one.
So that was the Matthew Archer question. What steps are you taking to ensure the end product will be the same?
Way to go, Matthew.
Yeah, awesome. Well, for me, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, excellent questions. I get a lot of questions, obviously, in my role, and there truly were some unique ones tonight. So I greatly appreciate all of them. Clark, I'll apologize in advance. I loved your questions as well. In fact, I saw some of your other ones, and I'm not sure if you're my mom on a burner account or not, but you definitely did your research on me. But the question regarding memories of being at the still or going to the still with my dad, that definitely warmed up my heart a little bit. So he kind of got me on my soft side there. So whoever did that one will get our limited or our allocated release, which is a 9-year-old Alabama style cask strength whiskey, which is 120 proof.
So I think that was Sarah Steepleton.
I believe it. That sounds right, but I don't want to say and then get anybody. Let's see. Yeah, it was Sarah Steepleton. I'm seeing it here. So, congrats to you, Sarah, and great questions from all. There's if for wondering, I know we're closing it out. I do want to take I know we may probably even went a little past time here. Steve and I are pretty long-winded, so we apologize for that. But we could talk the ears off of Billy Goat. But I do want to take a moment to thank anyone and everyone who is a part of this and, purchased and received a single barrel pick. And even if you didn't and you're here listening or just hanging out, I wake up and do what I do every day to tell the story of my grandfather. That's literally what drives me and gets me out of bed every morning. So to have the opportunity to tell his story to any group of people, I don't care if it's 2 people or 2,000 people, that's an opportunity I never take lightly. I think you probably did more for me tonight than I could ever do for you. And I thank you all for your time and your questions and everything. And we hope you continue to drink and enjoy Clyde Mays whiskey. Right now, we have an excellent product. We really do. It's a quality product, but keep enjoying it and get ready for the next chapter, because the next chapter is about to start. And I just want to thank you all so much for being a part of tonight. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you both very much.
I'd just like to invite everyone that's on the call to come see us. If you're ever in Alabama, we're right there in Troy, Alabama, right off Highway 231 and about an hour south of Montgomery. If you've ever been to the Panhandle of Florida, we're due south from Montgomery straight down to Panama City. So we're sitting there ready. We hope to get open by the first of the year. So come see us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, keep me posted. I'd love to come out.
Yeah, no, if anyone on this call, it's an open invitation. You tell me that you were on the Eureka call, and don't share that little secret code with your friends, but I'll give you a personal tour myself. So if you make it down, I'll give you a tour, and so will Steve. So we greatly appreciate it. Again, thank you guys so much, and keep enjoying these fine whiskeys, and I hope you learned something tonight. Thank you so much.
Cheers, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.